Hello, everyone. I'm William Henry. Welcome to Starwalker Cafe, here with my co host, David Mirsky. Our guest today is Molly Jane. She's an oracle, she's a multidimensional contactee, has a vast background in multidimensional conversations with otherworldly beings. We welcome her to the program. We hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone. I'm William Henry, joined by David Mirsky. Nice to see you, David.
Thank you, William.
Today we are joined by our special guest, Molly Jane. Welcome to the Starwalker Cafe, Molly. So good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so you are an oracle. You link with multidimensional intelligences, what we call Starwalkers. So very excited to have this conversation with you and to talk about some of your thoughts and connections in this regard.
It's funny, every time someone introduced me as an oracle or something like that, I cringe a little bit inside because I feel like language is so limited on this planet. And, as we all know, as humans, we kind of have to bunch ourselves up and put ourselves into a little box to be able to conceptualize kind of what it is that I do. But I guess, for lack of better word, and I'm still searching for a different word, but we'll go with oracle for now.
I like oracle. I mean, when you look up the word oracle, it refers to a sacred spot, a sacred dot of real estate. Oracle of Delphi, for example, very well known. An oracle is a divinely received communication as well, and an oracle then is the priest or priestess who receives that transmission from that divine source. So. Does that seem to kind of fit your perspective?
That feels better on my system. That feels better on my system. And because I guess that's what it is. I just say I'm a conduit to the divine. This is, however this is, it's just the vessel or the conduit. Like, I'm just directly connected to whatever I need to be connected to, which I believe is God. And the rest, I'm just really good at interpreting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, the oracular tradition is so fascinating to study, too. I mean, it goes right back to the very beginning of human history and sacred traditions. Virtually every sacred text can be considered an oracle. Nobody knows who some of these prophets were actually speaking with. They're identified as God. Could be an aspect of themselves. It could be another divine. It could be a divine being. It could be some trickster being as well. How do you discern ultimately where the message is coming from and ultimately its veracity?
This is a really good question, and one of my favorite questions, actually, because I believe that, like, everything that you just said there of how we can describe how all these prophets and what they were connecting into, the answer could have been to all of the above of what you just said. The way I navigate this multidimensional universe is by focusing on my human body first and foremost. So this is one of my biggest messages. Like, if you don't have the human body right, if you're not, embodying your lessons and your traumas and doing personal development work and also physical work on the physical vessel within this life, then there's no point going to all the other space, because I'm very big on the quantum physics side to things as well. So as within, so without. So I believe that the clearer your physical channel is, the closer you get to all that is God, source, universe, whatever language you want to put on it. So the way I have become very good at translating the language of energy is by focusing on my human first and foremost, not trying to discount this in any way. And then I spent a lot of time in a multidimensional world to experience different realities, to collect my own data over the course of about nearly 10 years. So now I feel like I've learned a lot in regards to, if I do receive a different message from something that isn't God, source, or whatever. But essentially, if you collect all the fragments up of all of this stuff and put it back into the middle, it all comes from the same thing anyway. And which is essentially us, which is essentially God. My beliefs. my beliefs anyway.
But Molly, you've been doing this for a long time, right? You've had experiences since you were a child.
Hmm.
You want to
Hmm.
go into that a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah, we can go into that. So I always speak about this. This was my first unconscious experience when it came to multidimensional beings. And I didn't know that it was an experience until much later down the track when I was more aware of what was going on. So I would have been about 9 years old, and I was staying at my cousin's farm in the middle of Australia, no light, in the middle of nowhere, completely off the grid. And it was cool. Like, we always loved to go to the farm. And I remember one night in the middle of the night, I woke up pitch black, like one of those things where you open up your eyes and just dark, like not even a shadow. Like, that's how dark it was. And in the corner of the room, I saw this orb. And, as I've told this story over and over again, I've now come to realize that once I gave attention to the orb, that is when the orb started to move and take shape. If I didn't give it attention, just like anything with energy, if you're going to give attention to it, it's going to take more shape. If you don't want to give energy and attention to something, take your attention off it and it disappears. So this was the same in the sense with this orb. As soon as I looked at it, it started to move across the room, and it was like as big as my head, and it went really quickly from one side to the other, and it got faster and faster and faster. And I ended up sitting up at this point because I was frozen in fear. I was petrified at this point. Like, I was like, and then it got like closer and closer and closer to my head, and then it went boom into my body like that, and I fell backwards. Remember it so clearly, and I just remember screaming. And my auntie came running down, and she's like, "It's okay, it was just a dream, it was just a dream." And for 20 years, I convinced myself that it was just a dream. And I remember every now and then I would, like, when the internet came about, like, I'd type into the internet, I was like, orbs that go into your body. Like, I was like, what was this? And then it wasn't until I had my first conscious encounter with multidimensional beings that I started to put the pieces together and started to ask questions and started to learn. And now I believe it was my multidimensional self activating the light within me. Whether you want to call that multidimensional self a version of me from the future, whatever it is, it was something that was an extension of me that activated this world within me. And I always say, like, I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe it's for me to sit here and talk about it today. Like, for whatever reason it is, it's happening, and I don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, that is like the beginning of a classic alien abduction scenario as well. So how did you were able to navigate that to recognize, well, at 9 years old, you probably wouldn't have been able to do so, but perhaps upon reflection, when you're studying orbs like that and that paralyzing fear that you felt, classic alien abduction. And so how do you feel like it moved more into a multidimensional contact as opposed to like a full-blown abduction scenario?
Well, I don't. And this is the thing. I have tried really hard, other than those few times just like Googling when I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Since I did open up my channel, I've tried really hard to not try to search more information and read books and even talk to other people, because I wanted to stay so clear and grounded and rooted in my experience and I felt this real call and need to work it out for myself, and I didn't want my mind to be imprinted with any energy to confuse my ego in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know
Yeah.
like what that was.
Yeah, I had a similar experience like that actually. The first time I went into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, I've been in there 100 times since, but the first time I went in there, I really didn't even know what I was doing. I'm in this granite resonance chamber, and I'm looking around my group. We get quiet, decide I'm going to just sit back against the wall, close my eyes, take stock of where I am, most powerful monument ever constructed on Earth, center of the land masses of the planet. So I just started sending out love to my family and friends back home. And all of a sudden, this blue eye manifests out of nowhere, and it's beaming bliss at me. And it was just the most loving feeling I've ever experienced. And then the face, or the blue eyes sort of resolved into this very, very ancient face, almost like Native American. And then another one appeared. And I got out of the pyramid. I didn't even know what it was. And I asked my group, did anybody else experience this blue eye beaming bliss at them? And no one had. And then we get down to the museum, the Luxor Museum down in Upper Egypt. And I find this little 2-inch tall pyramid with the blue eye of Horus right there, exactly where the king's chamber is located. I'm like, that's it. That's what I saw. And that set me off on this whole research quest to try to understand multidimensional contact like that. And as you're talking about the orb, I was led to the work of a physicist who postulated that if you're like a super advanced technological civilization, you're not going to send out generation starships. You're not going to send out flying saucers looking around the galaxy. You're either going to send robots or you're going to send light probes. And he proposed that what could be possible, and I'm coming back around to your experience here, is that this civilization might send out these light probes as orbs of light that are then seeking intelligence or consciousness. And wherever they find that consciousness, they're then able to manifest before that individual or whatever it is that they make contact with. And then the person that sends out the orb remains on their home world, their home planet, but then can probe through this light orb. And it's even possible, they postulated, that these orbs could then be expanded so that the being on the far end could step through, or perhaps even a human could step into the orb and then travel the cosmos. And that was such a phenomenal idea, and it sounds resonant in some respects with your experience with the orb.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that just gave me so much clarity. And because that's what happened. My journey after that, I have always said the words, now I am the portal. It doesn't matter where I am.
Right.
My aura is sitting at a certain frequency now that if I want to step through into a different dimension, I can, or if they want to come in, they can. And, now, like, there's been so many things since then, but I do believe that orb experience was the beginning. And then it was literally just me trying to learn, not even learn, just remember how to use these technologies in a way where I'm still rooted in my sovereignty and my physical vessel. Because I think a lot of people get like so excited with all of this stuff, and they're like, oh my gosh. And, that we put it on such a pedestal outside of us, and we think that it's bigger and better. But at the end of the day, like, we're human. We have to be integrated in this human experience, because without being a human, we wouldn't be able to perceive all of these things and get excited about it anyway. And we go back to that. So I always, like, no matter, I think because I am so rooted here, I can go so far, and I have been. And I think it's kind of like, I like being a walking contradiction. Like, a lot of people wouldn't think I've been to the edges of the universe and back, but I have.
I was there last weekend. I mean, it's still there. It's a wonderful place. It's
I love how you talk about that, Molly, because, it brings around the concept that there's also, when people start to think about aliens, and it's always about in this sort of otherness sort of concept, rather than what you're discussing, which is that this is actually us. Maybe it's interdimensional. But that there's not a separateness there that I think a lot of people really, when we talk about these things, we talk about it in terms of, oh, they're coming, and not as much that this is actually maybe an extension of us, and how does that really work? And also that it's always about, is it about escapism? But the reality is what you're talking about is this is about how to get in touch with ourselves, maybe parts of ourselves that we don't really deal with on a 3D basis in daily life, but that it's the importance actually is how do we improve our life here and make our existence better for us and everyone.
Hmm. Well, it's so interesting because I believe at the moment there's so many truths that are existing at the same time. So you can have a sentence that's they're an extension of us because they are, but at the very same time, the way humans perceive things, it's not us, you know? So it's kind of like this push and pull, and we're moving into a time where different truths can exist in the same sentence for the same thing. And I just, the truth of the matter is they are becoming more revealed in the frequency of where the earth is sitting at right now, and obviously moving into the age of Aquarius, Pluto going into Aquarius, where doing this today, Pluto's doing some kamikaze thing. Like, if anyone's into astrology, the fact that we're having a conversation like this today is so on brand for, for all of what the changes that are happening right now. And it's just going to continue to be pushed into our faces a lot more. So I think people like us who do have a microphone or whatever is just gently reminding people that, yes, it is this big, cool thing, and it might look like it's something outside of us, like, and they are coming to help. And from my research with them, I believe they're just bringing everything back into balance, and I can get more into that later. But they are coming to help, but that doesn't discount our experience here and who we are, and your choice in how you want to show up. So it's really difficult, and I feel like the storytellers and the people with the microphones just have to try their best just as we move into this place of it being more normal to people and educating them as best as we possibly can.
Well, I mean, you're talking about orbs. What was it in December, that major orb flap in New Jersey and literally around the world? It seems to have kind of dissipated now. Here's we're recording on January 20th, 2025. But that was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. There, maybe even for some, their first introduction to the idea of orbs, and possibly even thinking about a multidimensional intelligence that is intervening in human affairs.
How exciting. And kind of the plan, really, isn't it? Just to drip feed it in. But I think disclosure is a funny thing because it's something that it's not going to go the way that we think it's all going to go based on the amount of information that is in our faces 24/7. People are just numb to these big announcements now. It's just not as hard hitting as what something would have been 10 years ago. So it's a gradual thing. And I came to the conclusion just over the weekend, actually, that I feel like the real disclosure will be happening for everybody in their own small individual little communities who are just speaking up about this and making it seem kind of normal, not one big event. Because even if I always say this, like, if a big mothership appeared over New York City right now, no one in Australia would be able to feel the realness of that, unless they saw it with their own eyes. So I do believe ships will be revealed over time eventually, but until then, it's the smaller communities and just speaking their truth that will help with the disclosure.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating subject. And having been involved with call it the UFO alternative history community in America for almost 40 years now, I've watched the progression. I know all the players and know the who's real, who's not. And this idea of a instantaneous revelation, I agree with you. That's not going to happen. It's been happening for 40 years. It started in 1947, and it's going to take probably another couple generations, in my view. I mean, we are clearly, with the advent of ancient aliens, which I've been involved with for 14 years, we were the tip of the spear for awakening people around the world. And that's going to continue to evolve. But the point of the Starwalker Cafe is to say, hey, wait a minute, not only have beings been coming here since the very beginning, but humans have also been going there. So if someone is interested in just kind of getting on that path, the Starwalker path, what would be your, sort of step-by-step process for them? You talked about getting the physical body right, which I think is really apropos, because if your body's right, chances are your mind is functioning a little bit better. What else would you suggest for people to get themselves on this path to more fully embrace this multidimensional reality?
So yeah, as I said, physical health, mental health, energetic health. Like I'm such big on energetic health, and you would know by now energetic healers or whoever it is, whoever you resonate with. But the whole idea of, if we have a physical body and then we have an energetic body, it's the energetic body that is going to connect to the multidimensional layers of this universe. So you clear the physical vessel so you can hear the energetic body. And like we could rename the energetic body whatever you wanted to name it to, whether it's like your 5D self, your higher self, your whatever it is, but it's a version of you that has access to all that is. And then there's the physical vessel, so you clear the physical vessel first so you have access to you. And then it's almost like you're walking around this planet with two versions of you, because you can't, like, a lot of people used to be like, oh, we're going to transcend from the 3D and blah, 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 blah. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think that just is a load of shit. Am I allowed to say that?
I agree with you.
Because
It's nonsense.
because it's nonsense.
It's baby
because
talk.
we cannot what a privilege it is to be in this body,
Yeah, I know.
right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's just language. People are struggling with the language to describe what is true and what is happening, but they don't have the words to describe it. So I believe it's the higher self, 5D self, whatever you want to call it, that we're gaining access to. And then you still have the 3D body, but it's like two of you, which is essentially one, and you have access to this. So once you've kind of worked on the energetic body, doing basic energetic management, like clearing your energetic field every day and night, doing some practices and rituals so you're not carrying around everyone's energy all the time and you can't hear your own higher energetic self. So then once you kind of do that, the way I got into it was I went through a lot of trauma, and this is why I was clearing so much from my vessel. So I've always had this connection, but because of the trauma that I was in for a really long time, it muffled me. And then as soon as I broke free from that, it's like the sky lifted and I was back to who I was and who I came here to be, just this like light being of bubbly fairy energy, right? And then that is when I started going to like sound healings, meditations, and while I was in the sound healings, that's when I had my first conscious multidimensional experience. And then I also really navigated these first lot of meditations when I was connecting in through automatic writing and channeling through automatic writing. And I believe that is a really beautiful tool for people just to work out their own path in this, because I could write a book on how I did all of this, but my experience compared to your individual experience could be two completely different things. So this is why I always say start with the physical body so you can hear it. You can hear you. Maybe automatic writing isn't your thing, but I know for me personally that really did help.
Yeah, we seem to be in you can almost describe it as a trauma revolution right now, where people are really addressing that. Breath work, meditation, sound healing, entheogens, especially in America. People all over the country are discovering ayahuasca, MDMA, ketamine as these incredibly valuable tools for relieving themselves of these traumas. And there's some are kind of not really accepting of that. They're thinking, no, it's first of all, some of those substances are illegal. Second, you should do it naturally through meditation or breath work. Others say, take take the Concorde and seek out these substances. What are your thoughts on the rise of the incredible rise of entheogens in our world right now?
Just like anything, if you're doing it for the right reasons, I think it's wonderful. You know, I think if you're doing it as an escape and it's a band aid
Hmm.
and you're not embodying the work that's actually coming through with that, then I think it's pointless because you're missing the whole point. Just because you're doing something spiritual and connecting to the earth, but you're not embodying it in everyday life, then you're just missing the whole point. However, I know that some people don't have the natural abilities to just connect in like me, and they have been able to get there through that as well. So I think it's just like a checking of yourself all the time. Like, am I genuinely doing this because it an escape? Like, is it something that is genuinely opening me up to the idea of more? But this is the thing too, and I think this is the whole spiritual journey. You start, you go in, you kind of like learn all the lessons and everything, and you're like, oh yes, I'm enlightened, woohoo, and then you have to go back into normal everyday 3D life, and then a lot of people start to like trip up again, and then they're trying to go back to, get this high and this escape of where they came through. But the trick is integrating it here, in the everyday life. This is the real spiritual practice life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I've written books on ascension and been teaching about ascension, the history of ascension, really, for a couple of decades. And I just always counsel people, how they ask, well, how will I know when I'm ascended? And my answer is, you won't be on Earth. That's how you know when you're an ascended being. And so when people talk about how enlightened they are on Earth, and you are to embody that light on Earth, but in many cases, and this could be the great flip of our time as well, is that we will literally see these luminous or radiant glowing beings walking amongst us. That's one of the hallmarks of ascended beings. Certainly the masters were noted for this radiance or luminosity that's attached to them. And I personally hope that will be the case, that we will be merging with this higher dimensional reality, and we will see these luminous and radiant beings walking amongst us. But historically, much of Earth life is simply the training ground, and you've mastered these principles, these spiritual principles, when you're no longer here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that. I love talking to you. I think you're fun. So I love all of the, like, yeah, it's cool. It's just nice when I do like connect in with people. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, I actually, there's other people on the planet who think like me. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I hope too. I hope and pray. No, I don't hope. I know it will happen. Whether us seeing that, those beings in the form that we think we're going to see them, you know, whether that will happen in our lifetime or not, or whether we already are in one way or another, who knows? Like, I don't think I'm human. I really don't. Like, I am because I'm here, but it's 50-50, so who's to say that it's not already happening one way or another? Yeah, I don't know, but again, it's just us being so integrated in the present, and just waking up and like seeing the earth for what it is and the information for what it is, like every single day, just like what's being presented with us today, and just accepting it. And if some of those days we wake up and there is a multidimensional being like gliding around, then we can just be like, everyone, it's cool, like it's fine, it's not that big of a deal, and we don't have to be scared, and we can live in love and all of that. So actually, I wouldn't mind talking about this, because a lot of people are like, why are they coming? Like, why are they here? And I don't know what your experience is, but from the data that I've collected and the missions that I've done in the multidimensional world, like there was a time frame there for like maybe a year, and so it was actually my kinesiologist. She wasn't into this sort of stuff at all, and she's like, Molly, I'm getting this really strong message that you need to meditate once a week, every Monday night, 8:05 to this frequency music, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I'm sorry if that sounds weird. I'm like, nothing's weird to me, my love. Like, it's fine. So I strapped in to do it. And it was a series of 6 weeks. And the first week they took me up to, I would always go up to like these portals, and I'd sometimes they would try and trick me to where I was going, and we would go into different spots. It was like they were trying to take me through a maze, but I would always be curious and look and like come back the same way. And we'd always get to this big door. It was like this big wooden door, and I'd go in, and it was this big long table that we were sitting at, and I had this image of like something that resembled Darth Vader, is the only way I could describe it. But what that represented to me, because again, it's all just a reflection of my internal reality and how I perceive things. This Darth Vader character represented dark to me. And then in the same boardroom table, then I had Jesus walk in. And I remember I was looking at Darth Vader and Jesus interacting and like high-fiving each other, and I was like, don't you guys hate each other? I'm like, what, what's going on here? And then they took me through like a training program of that one, like Darth was trying to scare me, and I'm so solid in every realm. Like I'm not scared of anything in other dimensions. And because I can hold my light there, I think that's where I get so far, I guess. But I just watched them and I was like, this is so interesting. And then, anyways, they sent me back down. Following week, same time, same spot. We go to the boardroom table and they're like, all right, are you ready? And Jesus and Darth again. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, let's go. We jumped in like this little spaceship, is what it felt like. Darth was in front, Jesus was behind me, and I was in the middle. And I was in Australia at this point. I didn't know much about America. Well, I knew a bit, but just basics, right? And they dropped me out at this spot, and I was in Earth, but I was in another dimension over Earth, and I was sitting at the top of an obelisk, and I was sitting at the top, and they said to me, you know what to do. And so from the training that I did, all of the energy from the obelisk from around like the place that we're in, it was like this big green grass area, I had to bring all the energy like through the obelisk up through my body and out the top of my head like a Taurus field. And it was going like this. And it was hurting my body. I remember it was really, really hurting my body. And this was one of the first things that happened when I didn't understand the other dimensions, and that there were like almost guards in other dimensions. And then this was the only time I've ever been scared. And I remember they put it through my body, well, I put it through my body, and then it's like something noticed me, and it wasn't dark, Darth Vader, it wasn't light, Jesus, it was this third energy, and it's like it noticed me, and then it came towards me like a freight train, just like like that, and it smashed my multi-dimensional body into trillions of pieces. Like all my fragments were gone. And then Darth appeared and Jesus appeared, and they put this force field around me, and they said again, you know what to do. And so I sat there and I pulled all my pieces back together, and then as soon as the last fragment came back in, the force field bubble went and we ended up back in the boardroom. And I remember I was at the table, I was like, what was that? I was like, what was that? I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do this. Anyways, ended up going back down. And then I had more series of events that happened after that. But my point is, what I learned is there's dark and there's light, and that's the natural flow of this energetic universe. You cannot have one without the other. But there was this good energy, whether you want to label it as greed, power, fear, whatever, but it was in what I saw, it was in certain places that I needed to go in there with my physical body and dismantle the energetic charge of that third energy. And, now I realize I was sitting at the top of the Washington Monument, and other places they took me were under the ocean, the Vatican, the White House. And I saw over time, as I kept going to places, that because I was stretching so much and I got better in that dimension, eventually they couldn't see me.
Interesting. As you're speaking, it reminds me of I was having a conversation with my partner Julie recently about ascension and equating ascension with the feeling of wholeness. And wholeness, of course, can be equated with holiness as well. And the question then became, well, what is that feeling of ultimate wholeness? And she said it's like the end of a play when the dark figure comes out on stage and the hero of the story comes out on stage and all the players, and you recognize, oh, that guy, he was so good as that evil figure. And it brings it all together, and you recognize that, yeah, it's part of ourselves, and we should not, maybe embrace might not be the right word, but you were willing to go down that road, and you got that immense payoff by uniting these contradictory forces, if you will.
Yes, and I think on this planet, we automatically put, dark energies into the bad side, the evil side. And it's like, there's a third thing that needs to be dismantled from this planet. Like, it's the system. It's been bleeding through the system of how we've lived for a really long time, and that's what needs to go away. So that's my point, the aliens, or whatever you want to call them, coming back to get rid of that, to get this balance of dark and light back in.
Right.
And this is what I say too, like, and I love what your partner said about like the plate. That's so cool. That's really, really cool, because it's true. I'm not, and this is what I say, I'm not scared to look at any part of myself, dark part of myself. It's almost fun now. Like, when it comes up, I'm like, let's have a look. Like, what do we got?
Yeah.
What do you want to teach me? And because I know the payoff, I know not even the payoff to go interdimensionally into all different universes or whatever, but the payoff of how I feel here.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, Dolores Cannon when she would talk about a lot of things in her books, and talks about how this is a play, and that we set this up with our spirit families along another soul journey, and we may change positions, and this time you be the parent and I'll be the child, or you be this and I'll be that, and let's see if we can work it out and grow from that. And it's really interesting. But the point about that is we take everything so seriously because we're so condensed in the energy. And Molly talks about this sometimes too, that the limitations of the world and everyday life, ironically, though, make it a wonderful playground where we can really experience things to the fullest. And if we could sit back and realize that, maybe this is just a play. Let's just go with it, because really, in our scheme of time, this is going to be over in a blink. And maybe we've done this hundreds of times already. And so while each experience in and of itself is vastly important, at the same time, everything's going to go, it's going to flow, and we're going to be, we're going to move on from this. So why not just embrace that and try to live more happily, every day.
Yeah. And to your point too, Molly, I'm recalling a conversation with a friend. She's very much a devotee of the Virgin Mary, and studies the Marian apparitions, Mary appearing as a plasma being, as a light being, which obviously she's coming from a higher dimensional realm and manifesting in our 3D world in a way that people can encounter her. And then she's in a really deep journey, and the Mother Mary appears to her in this journey. And she also has this backdrop of this multi-dimensional experience. And she's a little bit terrified because she's worried that if I embrace this multidimensional world, will I lose touch with Mother Mary? And Mother Mary's message was, well, where do you think I come from? Right? Yeah. This is my natural place, this multidimensional universe. Squeezing myself into a tiny plasma body to manifest on Earth, it was a real trick in essence. And she's saying, hey, wake up, enjoy, as you keep saying, enjoy this physical experience, but recognize whether it's Mother Mary, Jesus, any of the avatars of any spiritual tradition, they're not from Earth. They're from this multidimensional reality. Even Jesus said, I am from above, you are from below. You are from this world. I am not from this world. Well, what world is he from?
Right.
It must be this multidimensional world. This is what we're starting to call it now. Call it the kingdom of heaven, the pure land, whatever. It's been spoken of in every religious and spiritual tradition, and now we get to experience it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think Molly
Mm-hmm.
talks a lot about that too, like look within, right? Mm-hmm. That's where really the power resides. I think is a central message coming from you. Yeah.
But then just also understanding that the clumps of energy that come from the light of all that is, if we weren't human, we wouldn't be able to perceive it. Like, that lady, how she wouldn't be able to perceive Mary in that form if we weren't human. And that's what I say too. Like, if we were to just all of a sudden all leave this planet, go to the higher dimensional realities, it's not going to be like this. It's like the way we see up there, you might not see with your eyes up there. It's a sensory experience, but we're not seeing form of these beings or ascended masters or whoever it is. But when you tap into the all that is, sometimes you're lucky enough to have different experiences with some great amazing people from over history and the stories through mythology and all of that, like whatever it is, like how cool. But essentially at the end of the day, this is where the two truths can exist in the one sentence. It's all us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel a kind of a sense of urgency for people to kind of open up and embrace this. I mean,
Sure.
For thousands of years, we've not had a predator on this planet.
Right.
We do now. Artificial intelligence and transhumanism is they're coming after the human experience. And in some people's view, it's going to be an expansive experience. For others, it's going to be very limiting and authoritarian. You combine that with what's going on with extraterrestrial disclosure, and it's very clear that we're now in a time such that no human has ever really lived in before. And that's where I think we are looking for something. And this is where the Starwalker idea, the multidimensional idea really comes in and is ultimately very helpful because it gives us a sense of permanence beyond this experience.
Yeah, to that end, Molly talks about activation of our DNA, right? And kind of expanding the five senses that we typically rely on to be able to touch base and sort of improve our ability to become a little bit extra sensory. Can you talk about that, Molly?
Yeah. So part of my practice, one of the other things that I do is I do light language, and I never really wanted to be the light language girl, but it just dropped through. I was like, we're doing light language now. Like I'm just the conduit. Whatever has to come through does. That's how I live my life. And I actually have changed the wording now. It's more like sound medicine. So this ancient language that I'm speaking, it's almost like I'm a pharmacist. And when someone has a session with me, I just drop into this medicine that is all frequency based. It's just sound frequency. And then it works in collaboration with your cells and your DNA to either activate more of your DNA or clear out your cells / bring your cells and DNA back into wholeness. So, I used it before the light language sound medicine dropped in. I would do spiritual surgery on people and help, clear a lot of the things to activate and bring more light into their vessel to activate more of their DNA so they can gain access to more of their multidimensional self. But now I do it in the sense of the sound medicine. So, I think with the amount of light that is being integrated on the planet at this time, we can't avoid it. People are going to be activating more light into their vessels. So we are coming online more and more and more. So this sense of urgency is sandwiched with a very, very real reality that it is happening. And I feel there's so many different layers to this, because I have already seen people where the light is being integrated, they haven't looked after their physical body and their psyche is almost cracking. And I think we touched on this very briefly before. You have to be very rooted in the human experience. I went so far into the multidimensional world for a while there that it was really hard for me to operate here because nothing seemed real. I had to really train to be a human again. And now being a human is my favorite thing to do, right? But it's like I don't want people to just because the light is coming, don't just be like, let's all go live there and like forget about this. I think that's why that's one of my biggest messages.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Molly. I mean, that's been my experience too. Coming from the ascension and light body area, again, more as a historian and a practitioner, and then encountering people that are using especially plant medicines and having these amazing illuminating experiences. And they're connecting with light beings, they're connecting with ascended masters, be it from Jesus to Mary to Buddha, or whoever, Osiris, Thoth, but they don't know who they are in some instances. And so they come back from their journey with more questions, of course, than when they entered into it, which is a good thing. But you're hitting on that central point that integration is going to be the key here. People, in many instances, don't even know they have a light body, and let alone that how to care and nurture your light body or their multidimensional self. That the concept of ascension from a religious point of view, especially, has been something reserved only for special individuals, but not you. But now that's the big flip in our time where people are recognizing, hey, wait a minute, maybe I need to take some responsibility for my care and feeding of my soul, for my ascension, and I might need to broaden my perspective beyond traditional earth-based religions. And this is where folks like you, teachers, practitioners like you, are going to be so integral to the advancement that's coming.
Yeah. And this, but all of us too, in anyone who would be listening to this is open to this world and curious one way or another. So it goes back to the first thing I said about disclosure within your own individual communities. But it's also to connecting with your physical body to decide what's right for you that day, because there's been systems that have been written for the spiritual world and what channeling needs to look like and what ascension needs to look like, and that's just also a one size fits all too. So it's about connecting with yourself every single day and just speaking your truth every single day, and it doesn't have to look the way you think it needs to look. So if people are watching this here and listening to this, they may have their own little individual communities where they want to speak up a little bit more about this, but I just want to remind you, you don't have to do what every single other person on the internet is doing right now. You don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to rinse and repeat the same formula on TikTok and blah, 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 blah. Like, do it your own individual way by checking in. I'm still on social media. If I could get off social media, I would. But for whatever reason, it's like part of I'm very relatable, right? Like, I'm very relatable, and I feel like if people are like, she's talking about aliens, like maybe like there's something to this, because I'm just so solid in who I am. I'm like, I don't care if you believe me or not. Like, whatever. I talk to aliens. Bye. And that, I think, that authenticity and the unique way that I do it allows other people to maybe open up their view a tiny little bit. But at the end of the day, it's not my problem if they do or don't. All I can do is be myself. And I think the people who are watching, if you can take one thing away from this, is just be you loudly, and if people want to, sometimes you don't even know what you do until they go away and they're at home, or like they're Googling this, and like you don't know the impact that you're having on people just by showing up as your most authentic self.
It's a great message, just to be yourself, be individual. And I recently had a session with Molly that was really, really interesting, something that I had never experienced before in that particular way with light language and codes. And so I'm still integrating that, but it was a really unique experience. I encourage anybody who really thinks they might be interested in that to get in touch with Molly, and we'll be able to provide that contact so that they could partake of that experience, because I think it was really, really unique and wonderful. The codes are interesting. Do you want to kind of touch base on what the codes are all about?
The codes. So, well, this is the thing in this multidimensional world that we live in. There's not a one size fits answer for everything. So with this sound medicine and this frequency medicine that comes in, is there's no, like, you might get one hit of information from this download that comes through, but it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving, this light holds data and holds information, and sometimes that information might just be an activation of something within you when your body is at a frequency and ready to receive that information, and then it kind of blasts open, because this is all a collaboration. It's not like I'm inserting something that's like foreign to you. It is you, but it's just kind of clicks in like a puzzle piece when you're ready to perceive it however it needs to be perceived on this planet.
Interesting.
Yeah, and just going back to your thought a moment ago to just be yourself as loudly as possible, I always also really take into heart the Jewish tradition of setting an empty seat for Elijah, because they never know when Elijah is going to appear. And so the idea is that you just have to treat everybody as if they are that prophet they've awaited, or they are the one that might have the answer, because you simply do not know.
I think that's also part of the central message, which is, and I think this is kind of where Molly comes from as well, in that at the end of the day, the real task is to learn and discover that we're actually all one. And that, the neighbor that we come into contact, or the person on the street, or who we get coffee from, or even the person that cuts us off in traffic, that person to realize, hey, we're kind of all the same here, and let's kind of walk around and day to day realizing that we're part of this same light, and that kind of unification message. And I think that's really what I hope is going to become a central theme of the disclosure process.
So, as an oracle, any predictions for us, Molly?
Look, predictions are a funny thing because timelines can change so quickly. And, I guess people would understand what I mean when I say that. So the way I perceive the world, everything is energy. And if I think of a timeline, it's almost like a little train track, a little energetic charge that is, of light, that is being activated, of a timeline that very well could exist. But then we also have a lot of free will and a lot of other people and a lot of other things that kind of come in to kind of mess with how you envision that timeline being, so to speak. So when it comes to predictions, I have a sense and a feeling of shifts that may take place on the planet. However, I don't know what that looks like. So, for example, I lived in LA for about a year and a half. Like, normally I'm a gypsy. Well, I am a gypsy. I've got two suitcases, and if my body tells me I need to go somewhere on the planet, I go there. I don't have one thing in my way holding me back from my guidance. Like, if my guidance says to do something, I do it. That's just how I live. And I was pulled to LA for a really long time. And I remember in about January last year, I was like, it's time to go. Like, it's done. Like, you've prepped the grid, it's time, go. And I knew something was coming, but I didn't know how or what that was going to look like, right? And I could fill in the gaps to be like, oh, maybe it was the fires or whatever, it could be something else that happened. We don't know, but it's the visions and feelings I get are more of an energetical mashup to whatever is going on. So now I'm in New York City, and I have a very similar feeling to what it was like in LA. I feel like I'm prepping the grid. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't know what things are going to look like, but I do believe there will be an energetic shakeup at one point in time for New York City.
Yeah, well, New York, Washington, D.C.'s getting shaken up right now. The whole world is being shaken up. So it's a tremendously exciting time to be part of this. And I think, part of the message I'm taking from our conversation today is just be yourself as loud as you possibly can. Enjoy the ride. You might, in some respects, some people feel like we're like the canary in the mouth of the cat. You might as well enjoy the ride, or you extract yourself from the mouth of the cat and conduct your own journey.
Yeah, that's the message that I've taken from psychedelics and my journey experiences is presence.
Yeah.
Just really embracing the moment and milking every, last bit of that out of our life. Every day, every moment is sort of the fractal nature of an entire lifetime, and we should do it with as much gusto as we possibly can.
Right on. So Molly, just a couple minutes left. Would you like to share contact details, any information, any final message?
Oh, I don't really mind. The people who need to find me always find me. It's fine. But mollyjane.com, that's the basis of it. Yeah, no, I trust whoever's meant to cross my path will. And, even just these words, they hold codes as well. And I hope you can go away and be activated in something. So I guess instead of sharing like more of like where you can find me and that, I'd just like to finish with a message, if that's okay.
Please.
So it just kind of comes down to how all truths can exist at the same time. And even though we are in like such an important time in history, one of the most important, and most of our souls who have come at this time, like we chose to be here for this moment in time. So it's so exciting. It's so fun to be able to witness these shifts and these changes on the planet. But I just want to remind everyone that while we experience these shifts and these changes on the planet, to stay rooted in love and not fear, because we came at this time for everything to fall down so we could rebuild it in a frequency of where the planet is actually going to be sitting at now, a higher, faster frequency, not better or worse, just a higher measurement of frequency. And, we've just did this really pivotal time in history where we can really infuse the planet with so much love. And I know that sounds woo-woo, but that's just kind of the vibe. And even though that does hold a lot of weight of how important it is, remember it's not that serious at the same time. The two truths, like it's serious, but it's also not. So do still remember to have fun and enjoy smelling the roses. And like it snowed here in New York City last night. I was outside like a little kid, like dancing in the snow. Like don't forget about how beautiful this planet is, because it is. We're so lucky to be here, truly.
Yeah, and I don't find your message woo-woo at all. It's simple as following the commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Takes care of everything. It's a timeless message. So thank you for sharing that, Molly, very much. Any concluding thoughts, David?
No, Molly, I appreciate it. I think you're a true light worker and you're going to be doing big things. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I love what you're putting out there and keep doing it.
Yes, thank you, Molly, so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and come see us in Phoenix sometime.
Sedona.
I will.
Yeah, we'll go to Sedona, Molly. Yeah, we're going to do it.
We'll go to Sedona,
okay.
100%.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for watching today. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.